All right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick's Nine the Power. So in this video, I wanted to address the topic of bodybuilding today, modern bodybuilding. Is the standard for conditioning starting to slip? And for some of my international fans, I get this question a lot. What does conditioning mean? Conditioning is how lean the bodybuilder is, how ripped or shredded, how visible their lines and cuts are in their muscle, how much or how little body fat they have or water they have, mostly just how sharp and shredded they look. That's what conditioning means. And recently, from 2017 to 2018, there's been a lot of controversy regarding the level of conditioning, especially of some of the winners of some major bodybuilding shows. In particular, it kind of started with the 2017 Mr. Olympia. A lot of people were upset about the fact that Phil Heath won that show, having a gut and being significantly off for Phil Heath. His conditioning wasn't as good as it usually is, and his midsection obviously watery, bloated, and had a very visible gut on stage. So that kind of began the really scrutiny on the conditioning of the bodybuilders in modern times. And then recently, this 2018 bodybuilding season, this is basically the Olympia qualification series where all the pro shows are pretty much every week of bodybuilders trying to win a show or get enough points to qualify for the Mr. Olympia. Obviously, the biggest of which was the New York Pro a couple weeks ago. And the focus of a lot of people's criticism was the conditioning of all the guys in the New York Pro lineup, saying they were all pretty much lacking in conditioning. Albeit, I think the lighting definitely played a factor in these guys looking off. But you had guys in the top 6 of that show, not to call anybody out or single anybody out maliciously, but John De La Rosa placing 5th at the New York Pro, arguably the 3rd biggest show in bodybuilding. And John De La Rosa, to me, looked like he was in off-season condition. I mean, his conditioning was pretty bad. And you had the guys that won, Juan Morel and Nathan Diasha. While their conditioning wasn't bad, there were some good points brought up comparing the Night of Champions, which used to be the New York Pro back in the 90s, the conditioning level of the winners of the show back then compared to the conditioning now, and it's certainly night and day. I mean, these guys weren't nearly as conditioned as the guys were back in the day, and it was certainly noticeable. There was a little bit of blurriness to their physique, a little bit of water, and just kind of a film, if you will, of a lack of conditioning on some of these guys in the top 6. And then, of course, a couple weeks prior to that, you had the Pittsburgh Pro. And the Pittsburgh Pro, they didn't have men's open bodybuilding, but they did have classic physique. And you had the winner of that show, Steve Lorius, a.k.a. Mr. Propa, controversially winning that show because his conditioning was noticeably off. And the guy that took second, Divine Wilson, his conditioning was considerably better, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many bodybuilding fans, to Steve Lorius. I mean, Steve Lorius looked flat. His conditioning, he just kind of had that same blurry film of water on him where he just didn't look sharp. And then again, Steve Lorius would come back to the New York Pro a week or so later and compete in the 212 division where his conditioning was just way off. I mean, way off the mark. And this is a guy that a lot of people are regarding as, the savior of classic physique. This guy's going to be the next classic physique Mr. Olympia. And he comes into this 212 show looking, worse than off-season condition. And then, of course, you had the Cali Pro a couple weeks after the New York Pro. Nathan Diasha would win that as well as the New York Pro. And I don't think the conditioning at the Cali Pro was as bad as the New York Pro. I think a lot of these guys really came in top shape. Rafael Brandao, Nathan Diasha, Sasarati, all the guys in the top 3 and top 6, they really came correct, in my opinion, at the Cali Pro. It wasn't so much an issue of conditioning. But then fast forward to this past weekend, the Toronto Pro, where Cedric McMillan, who is a perennial fan favorite, I mean, who doesn't love Cedric? When Cedric comes in 100%, I mean, this guy's one of the best bodybuilders of all time. Classic physique, still got a crazy amount of muscle, nice V-taper, small waist, great symmetry, great proportion, all-around great bodybuilder. But he came into this Toronto Pro looking like he was in off-season condition. I mean, I hate to say it, I love Cedric just as much as the next guy, but Cedric looked like he had barely prepared at all for this Toronto Pro, and he came in a very disappointing conditioning. A lot of people thought he was going to win the show, and clearly he did not. So again, the question really is, why are these guys not coming in conditioned? And has the standard for conditioning dropped, and is that the reason why they're not trying as hard to be conditioned? Do they know, or do they think, the judges are looking mostly at size and muscularity, and conditioning is kind of an afterthought to that. So the goal is to come in big and full, and then if they happen to be conditioned, that's great. Is that the reason why these guys are coming in off at a lot of these shows? And that seems to be the case, because a lot of these shows, they're rewarding guys that are coming in off, but they're coming in big and full, and they still place well. Now, in Cedric's case, that obviously didn't happen because the judges are used to seeing a much better Cedric. They've seen an Arnold Classic winning Cedric. They've seen a top Olympian Cedric. So when Cedric comes in off, he doesn't get rewarded. But bigger guys, an example here would be Big Ramy. I mean, Big Ramy is a guy that he's got such freaky size, but he almost never comes in with crazy conditioning. Almost never. Especially at the Olympia. Honestly, I think in 2017, I don't know if Big Ramy deserved that second place finish. I think William Bonac could have beat him at the Olympia because, Big Ramy's conditioning just wasn't that great. It's never really that great. But again, I think he got rewarded with that second place spot because he did have that size. He did have that fullness. He just did have that crazy overall muscularity that the judges seem to be rewarding. So this is why guys like me and a lot of fans of the sport seem to really love this classic physique division, because the emphasis seems to be mostly on conditioning. These guys are weight restricted by how tall they are. And the goal of that weight restriction is to prevent these guys from getting too big to where they can't come in with condition. These guys almost have to come in condition because they struggle to make these weight limits. So when people get all excited about classic physique and people will rag on it and say, we want to see the big mass monsters, we want to see the freaks. This is why we're getting excited about it, because I think it's honestly going to bring about a change in the sport. This weight restriction, again, is almost requiring guys to come in crazy condition. And then if you combine that with the idea of classic poses, classic presentation, symmetry, focus on conditioning and shape and structure, and basically throwing the idea of who's the most muscular guy out of the window, it's basically who is the most well-presented guy, who is the most conditioned guy, who has the best flow, lines, and structure to their physique. And that's what bodybuilding really was in the 70s and 80s. There were no real mass monsters back then. And that's why a lot of people say that Dorian Yates ushered in the era of the mass monster, because he was really one of the first guys to have that type of physique. Before that, it was about aesthetics and posing and presentation. And that's why you had a smaller guy like Frank Zane win 3 Olympias against guys that were much bigger than him. So conditioning in bodybuilding, I think the standard has fallen. I think a lot of guys now are coming in looking almost off-season. Some of these guys that make these appearances, I would say they would have, they should have just guest posed at the show. They shouldn't have even competed or stepped on stage looking how they looked. And I know that might sound harsh, but I think it does so much worse for their career, for their reputation, to go on stage looking like that than to just not go on stage at all. Is it really worth that top 6 placing if you look, like garbage? Again, I'll go back to the Steve Laureus example. There was absolutely no reason for him to even compete in that 212 division. I don't know why he did it. He didn't look good. He came in 14th place out of 16 guys, I believe, so almost dead last. Absolutely no reason for him to even compete. It did nothing but hurt his career. He could have skipped that show, and he could have been riding high on that Pittsburgh Pro win all the way to the Olympia, and no one would have batted an eye. No one needed him to compete at that New York Pro. He didn't need to do it, but he did it anyway, and I think it definitely hurt his public perception. Now, Cedric McMillan, again, I think is another example of this. I believe Cedric is already qualified for the Mr. Olympia. He does not need to compete or win a pro show to qualify for the 2018 Olympia. So he could have skipped this show, never done it, and no one would have batted an eye. But now he's done it, and he's shown that his conditioning was very lacking. And I think that hurts his, momentum going into the Mr. Olympia. I think a lot of fans are going to write him off now. So it did nothing but bad for his perception. And a lot of people will comment my videos and say, Nick, you're always really hard on Big Ramy. It doesn't seem like you're a fan. Of course I'm a fan of Big Ramy. I mean, he's one of the biggest bodybuilders of all time, most impressive from a muscle mass standpoint. But I'm not going to sit here and praise Big Ramy when he comes in with conditioning that's just subpar. You can't come in and just expect to be the biggest guy and win just because you're the biggest guy. So when Big Ramy comes in with crazy conditioning at the Olympia and he deserves to win, then I'll praise Big Ramy. But if Big Ramy continues to come in flat, continues to come in watery, continues to come in soft, I'm not going to say, wow, Big Ramy's incredible, he deserves to win, because we already know Big Ramy's big. He's genetically big. He's going to be big. He's always going to come in big. That's not a problem for Big Ramy. The challenge for Big Ramy is to come in conditioned. So when he does that, that's when I'll praise Big Ramy. If Big Ramy keeps coming in just big but not conditioned, why would I praise Big Ramy for that? Big Ramy always comes in big. So do you see what I'm saying here? I'm certainly not a hater of Big Ramy. I think he's got a crazy physique, but I'm not going to, ride his dick. So I just wanted to kind of address the conditioning thing in a video because I do see that comment from time to time when you're talking about a bigger bodybuilder that's known for being a bigger bodybuilder and they always come in big. People I'll always get a couple comments here and there. Oh, why do you hate this guy? Why are you hating on this guy? And that's the logic behind it, is because this guy, it's easy for him to come in big, whether it be Big Ramy, Akeem Williams, even Ronnie Coleman towards the end of his career at his last couple of Olympias that he didn't win. He still came in huge. I mean, he came in really big, but the conditioning is what let him down. So my mentality is never praise a big bodybuilder just for coming in big, because they're pro bodybuilders. They're going to have crazy muscle mass. They're going to come in big. The challenge is, can these guys come in conditioned? And lately it seems like a lot of them are struggling with that. So I think if a lot of people turn their focus towards classic physique and say, okay, this is the new standard, and a lot of people stop saying and praising these guys for being big, they're going to realize, conditioning is the most important thing. And I'm not going to be able to get away with just coming in big because people don't care about that anymore. So that's the main point that I want to stress, is I think the mentality is shifting for a lot of reasons. Number one, I think, is health. I think a lot of these guys are looking for a healthier way to be pro bodybuilders, and classic physique offers that option. You don't have to get as big. It's not going to put as much stress on your body. You don't have to take as many or as much drugs, eat as much food, train as heavy, put as much stress on your body as an open bodybuilder that weighs 300 plus pounds in the off season. Then you've got to cut down a tremendous amount of weight. These guys in classic, they mostly walk around year round at a pretty lean body weight because they have to make this weight class. So there's no crazy fluctuation with these classic physique guys like there are men's open bodybuilders. You see some of these guys, Big Ramy included, getting up to weights like 350 pounds in the off season. Then they have to shed 50 pounds to make it to the stage. So not only are they carrying this crazy amount of body weight, then they have to go back down and lose a crazy amount of body weight. Then for the next off season, they'll do the same thing and bulk back up. And this roller coaster of up and down weight is horrible for the body. So number one, I think the mentality is shifting because of health. Classic physique is the clearly healthier option. And number two, it's the bigger guys that tend to have these severe health problems and die. I mean, look at Dallas McCarver, one of the biggest bodybuilders of this generation, 300 plus pound guy in the off season. I think he was 280s or 290s on stage. And then of course you had Rich Piana, the guy that did a video series literally called Bigger by the Day, where he was trying to get up to 330 pounds, I believe. So I think those two deaths definitely dramatically impacted the bodybuilding community as a whole and the way they looked at these bigger guys. And I think number two, it's just not becoming attainable or aesthetic or pretty to look at. People are starting to say, okay, we've seen enough giant guys. We know it can be done. But can these guys get conditioned? We don't want to see just big guy after big guy coming in with a gut, coming in with bad conditioning. We've seen enough of that. We want to see some guys that are shredded to the bone. And we're not seeing that. We're repeatedly getting these soft guys, these watery guys, these bubble guts over and over and over again. And people want to see something different. They want to see a sharp physique. They want to see a conditioned, lean, shredded physique. They want to see lines. They want to see striations. They don't want to see just a big ball, just a big sponge ball. But on the other side of that, do I want to see Big Ramy come in crazy shredded? Hell yes, I want to see Big Ramy come in crazy shredded. Are you kidding me? It's not that I don't like a guy that has crazy big muscle mass. It's that I don't like a guy that has crazy big muscle mass that thinks he doesn't have to diet or come in condition. Hell yeah, I want to see Big Ramy come in shredded. Hell yeah, I want to see what a guy that weighs 350 pounds in the off season looks like shredded to the bone. Hell yeah, I want to see that. So a little bit longer video today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. And make sure you guys let me know in the comment section below what you guys think about this, the standard of conditioning in bodybuilding in 2018. What you guys think about this classic physique division and the impact that it's going to have on the standard of conditioning, on the mindset towards bodybuilding. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Nick Strength and Power, signing out.